What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the same. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Lucas from Goloot.io. And Lucas, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. Since this is, Goloot is a tech company, really it's an ad network. Some interesting tech companies that I've had on include Pipedrive. Pipedrive was really interesting. When I interviewed them, Lucas, they had 10,000 customers. I think now they have over 100,000. So he talked about the journey. It was really a crazy, amazing journey of Pipedrive. Also, Zapier, the co-founder of Zapier, Wade Foster, again, talks about building, now, I don't know, back then, it was maybe a household name in tech companies, but now it's even bigger. So that was an interesting journey as well. Another one was Maurice Navone of Mobileye. Mobileye's journey, they got acquired by Intel for $15.3 billion. But what stuck out to me, and Lucas we were talking about it, was, it wasn't always sunshine and rainbows, right? And so he talked about the sacrifices they had to make along the way to get to that point, because it wasn't always clear they were going to have a huge exit. It was tough. And so a lot of ups and downs. So check out the Mobileye one too. This episode is brought to you by Rise25. Rise25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. And we do the strategy, the accountability, and the full execution. So Lucas, we kind of call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background to make it look easy for the host so they can create amazing content and amazing relationships. And most importantly, run their business. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I have found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you definitely should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. And I'm excited to introduce today Lucas Béland. And he's a 22-year-old Canadian founder. He's leading a fast-growing startup, Goloot. You can check him out at Goloot.io. They're an ad network on a mission to reimagine digital advertising for the web. And in less than 3 years, Goloot has raised close to $8 million in venture capital. He's assembled a team of nearly 20 industry veterans, and its technology is now available on close to or more than 50 premium content sites like Elle Magazine, Benzinga, and many more. Also, it's really tough, Lucas, what you do. It's like a dual marketplace is dual-sided. So you need to get these content sites. You also need to get customers. And so some of the customers include Foot Locker, Subaru, Microsoft, Uber, and many more. And as I mentioned, Goloot is an ad tech company that helps mobile and web publishers diversify their revenue streams. So if you picture these ads, we're used to interruptive banners and pop-ups, which can be annoying sometimes, I guess. Goloot actually provides a gamified and seamless ad experience that actually rewards the user engagement with curated e-commerce offers. So Lucas, thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me, Jeremy. It's a pleasure.
So just walk through a little bit of Goloot and what you do. And as you do that, I'm going to share my screen. So if people are listening to the audio, there is a video component to this, and we're going to poke around to see what they do. So Lucas, tell us more about what you do.
I'm happy to do so. Thank you for this great introduction. Thank you for pointing out to other episodes as well. For sure, drop in and listen on those amazing founder stories. They're all more inspirational and super interesting. So in terms of Goloot, as you said, a challenging business, but I don't know any business that isn't at this stage. We operate in that network, meaning that we connect, as you said now as well, about 50 or so premium content publishers, and it's growing by the day. We onboard on average 2 content partners per month. So about 50 content partners to a demand side, so a network of advertisers who right now we have about 150 global client relationships, while most of our businesses in Canada and in the US. And what sets us apart from traditional advertising networks and platforms or the entire programmatic industry is, of course, those direct relationships that we foster between publishers and brands. So no programmatic bidding process. It's really more of a direct network, but also these ad units and these ad products that we like to consider are user-friendly and user-first in their mindset. You know, I started the company about 3 years ago, and I'm one of the potentially only founders that walked into their industry by hating their industry. I did not like advertising. I did not like banners and pop-ups. I knew nothing about ads. I mean, I was a 19-year-old college student. You don't learn anything about advertising in college, but I knew that as a consumer, there was a better way to advertise to users than what was publicly available in the market. And I'm, of course, talking about banners and pop-ups and all these IB standard ad units that we've become so accustomed to that we've learned to hate in the sort of toxic relationship we've nurtured over the last 20 years as consumers. We've learned to hate, we've learned to ignore, and I wanted to reimagine that. So what the Goloot ad network does is when we partner up with a content site, we don't offer them these banners and these pop-ups. We offer them these gamified ad units that will reward the traffic for different behaviors on the site. And so if you think of a behavior in content, it's obviously reading an article, it's creating an account on a content site, it's subscribing to their newsletter, it's maybe visiting the website 2 or 3 days in a row. So we're rewarding these behaviors that are super high in engagement, super high in attention, and all these other metrics that are positive for advertisers. And when, again, users complete the behavior, we come in with our reward, which is traditionally an e-commerce offer. An e-commerce offer means something that we've negotiated with a brand, like a site-wide discount, a contest, a gift card of some sort, a 2-for-1 on your purchase, the gift with purchase. Again, we've seen so many different offers coming from our advertisers that are presented to the audience in the form of a reward. And as you can imagine, just listening to that story, being rewarded by a brand like Foot Locker is far more interesting and far more likely to get you to interact and convert than introducing Foot Locker through a banner or a pop-up that can be interruptive, most of the time will be ignored, provides little to no value to you as a user, and also doesn't make any sense holistically in the content experience. So that's what we do as a company, and we are looking to scale that, of course, in the content space, but also looking at other horizons. Think gaming, fitness, productivity. There's so many other ways we can expand our business, and we're super excited for that future that we're building at Goloot. So Jeremy, in a nutshell, that is our small business growing fast.
Yeah. So there's so much to unpack there, Lucas. One, I mean, we'll get to, you're 18, you start this, okay? Yes. And you raise, at this point, $8 million, okay? It's tremendous for anyone, let alone, so I want to know where the idea came from. But before we get to that, it's really tough, a marketplace, because you have to get both the publishers and advertisers. So I want to start with one of them, but like, where do you start? What's the ramp up here? You're like, okay, we need to deploy a team on publishers and advertisers. You're like, we need to get publishers first, because how do you start with this dual-sided marketplace?
It's a really good question. And I think it's the inherent problem of a lot of marketplaces and network dynamics. If you think Uber, Airbnb, even Amazon, that's managing supply and demand every day, there's an incredible book by Andrew Chen that refers to the cold start problem of any network and marketplace, right? And so this cold start problem is the biggest issue for a marketplace is the initial days of trying to connect demand and supply. But once you achieve that velocity and that scale, the marketplace sort of solve its own equation and it becomes self-sufficient. But early on at Goloot, we approached publishers who told us, hey, we would love to work with you. This is a great idea, but you don't have any advertisers. Like, you have no brands, no budget to spend on our platform. And then on the flip side, we went to see brands and we figured they wouldn't tell us, Lucas, you have no publishers, no audiences for me to advertise to, and you have a cold start problem there. And so there's, I would say maybe 50% of that is luck and 50% of that is just pure hustle and a bit of talent. We figured that the best approach in any marketplace, and especially in our business, which really creates value, is supply. everybody has a relationship with brands. Everybody has a relationship with L'Oreal in some capacity because L'Oreal's always looking to acquire customers. What is truly a gold mine from a value standpoint is audiences that are looking to buy products. So we prioritize publishers first, knowing that if as soon as we had, let alone one publisher on the network, we would find demand side partners who would want to advertise to that audience. So we went the publisher road first, and it was primarily human beings making healthy connections in our local community. I had a connection that got me to a connection that got me to a connection. We could talk about that in a minute as well. And eventually I sat down in front of this guy called Pierce Bourne, who used to be the head of sales for a very large media publisher in Canada called Narcity Media Group. Narcity has 3 major domains in the Canadian market, reaching about 20 million unique a month. The platform is growing and scaling, and Pierce was their head of sales. On his way out, he's been working there for about 5 or 6 years. And so Pierce joined my early stage venture as my head of sales and my CMO. And he's been leading the sales effort on both sides of the marketplace ever since. And so, of course, with Pierce, we onboarded Narcity first. And with Narcity, we went to get advertisers, and then we had Unlock Velocity, and from there, the network scaled. And so it came down to human beings. It came down to the local Montreal community supporting each other and understanding that innovation needs sometimes a bit of a push in the back to get on its 2 feet. So that's my story, Jeremy.
So how do you attract Pierce? You're 18, right?
Yes. It's a good
he's
question.
working for a huge publishing company with multimedia sites, and you come to him.
I come down with a vision. I came down with an ambition. And I think what Pierce liked about the journey and the story was this idea that I was sort of giving him the opportunity. And this is, I guess, for a lot of our employees, right? The opportunity to build their own future. There's something so incredibly thrilling and exciting in the startup journey to think that you can, if you think you have an impact in a corporate job, the startup amplifies that impact by 100,000x. So you are your own boss. And I came in with a very hands-off leadership approach where I was like, hey, I need you because you're a smart guy. You're much better than I am at your job. And together we are going to do something amazing. And there's a potential here to build $1 billion plus company that is going to redefine advertising for the open web. And what I always like to connect on with any individual, whether it's investors or my employees or my talent, whatever, is on the problem that we're trying to fix. And I think Pierce, as a publisher, felt that the advertising industry was failing its publishers by providing them with terrible ad products that were very disruptive and interruptive from a content standpoint. They were a big turning point for audiences. And we were also navigating this weird context from a legislative standpoint where the US and Canada were cracking down on ads, cracking down on privacy, and programmatic was starting to fall apart. And Safari was taking out cookies. It was just this storm of a problem that I connected with Pierce on, and I told him, look, I think we have an opportunity together to change that. And nothing motivates talent and human beings more than solving a problem. So that's how we started. And then, of course, I did not want to jeopardize his lifestyle. So we raised money. And with that money, I was able to pay him a reasonable salary. I don't think you can get incredible talent without proper resources as a business. And I didn't want to get Pierce and his family and whatnot to jump in my venture, knowing that he could risk his livelihood. That wasn't something that I was willing to live with as an entrepreneur. So we raised money early on, which was a whole different story as well. And Pierce was able to get a fair compensation, and together we scaled. And we've been working together for 3 years. And this applies to our CTO. This applies to our CPO, to our guys and girls and people that have made the sacrifice of joining an early stage venture and now scaling it into a multi-million-dollar company. So, yeah.
We'll go back, Lucas, to the fundraising part, because that's a whole other beast and animal. That's a full-time job in itself, right? Fundraising.
Correct.
So, I know you say kind of a quick aside, yeah, we raised money, but and that's how we attracted him. One of the things that attracted him, but that's not easy to do. And also we're talking,
no, it's not.
Put in perspective, you're 18. Okay, anyone listening, I'm thinking myself here. What was I doing when I was 18? We don't want to know. Yeah, I mean, I was a good kid, but sports, school, whatever, not like this. So this is really impressive. But let's go to the publisher side for a second, okay? Yes. And we'll take a look at that. So peers, again, it goes back to relationships, right? And people have relationships, and you kind of shortcut things when someone has long-standing relationships. They've been in the industry a long time, which is smart. But then you have to get more publishers, right? So a little
Yes.
bit of social proof credibility is good, but it doesn't always get you in like these relationships. So I'd love to hear, and we'll take a look at right here. We're looking at Benzinga. We also have another one, Sudbury. What were some of the objections you got, or the company got, when you approach, let's say, Benzinga, or you mentioned L? What are some of the objections you get? Because I'm sure you're like, listen, we can put these, I don't know what your pitch is, but like, we have these brands. What are some of the reasons why people say they're not sure at first? I don't know if you want to take
It's
L or Benzinga, or what were they
it's a really good
posing?
it's a really good question. I think what you need to know as well is my business originated in the gaming space, and we wanted to bring those ads to games companies first and foremost, right? So if you think gamification, if you think reward-driven advertising or incentive-driven advertising, games companies are the first thing that comes to mind, more specifically mobile games, right? So 70+% of mobile games rely exclusively on ads to monetize their games, and 91% of the apps on the Apple Store are free, and all that stuff. Like the metrics were there to say there's a huge market, and we can disrupt it with this new ad unit. And we got pushback from these original kinds of publishers, right? So publishers for me holistically means supply. And I don't care if they're games or content or fitness apps, they all have audiences they're looking to monetize. So
your original kind of thesis was, we're going to approach these companies and more in the gaming space. And so
correct.
It sounds like you somewhat pivoted.
Correct. And this is where you said, getting pushback from publishers. You'll see the kind of pushback that we got was like, if you want to work with a games company today, there are millions of people that are looking to get their ads in front of their audiences. Again, the crown jewel of this industry is supply. What really stands out across all the conversations that we have is everybody has a relationship with, for example, L'Oreal, and anybody can get ad budgets from L'Oreal. What L'Oreal is truly looking for is audiences. And so these publishers were sort of walled gardening their audiences and saying, hey, if you want to get your ads on my platform, although you're cute and these ads are cool, much better than what we're used to, you need to spend $100,000 a month plus on our platform, which is an unimaginable amount of money for an emerging business. So we thought, okay, games company might not be the right fit. And I went to this incredible mentor and veteran, which also comes back down to relationships, a guy called Mitch Garber in Montreal, very successful entrepreneur. You might know of him. And Mitch coached me and taught me to like, hey, I'm not sure games company is the right fit for this. You should be looking at publishers that really, really, really need to diversify their revenue stream. And this is where content came to mind. We thought, okay, just take a look at the public earning calls of BuzzFeed and all these companies. It's clear to everybody that they really need help. And so we pitched these publishers these new ad units, and they were like, look, whatever you have that gives me incrementally an additional dollar of revenue, we'll take it. So this is when we knew we had more of a product market fit on the supply side. And we thought to ourselves, once we're big in the content space and we own a large share of the market, we'll go back to games company with bigger buying power, and they'll probably call us. That was sort of the arrogance that we had. We'll let them call us and we'll get back to it. So we found publishers that were in dire need for new monetization strategies, and there wasn't a lot of pushback. I think some of the pushback that we got early on, maybe for content, was like, is it going to crash my website? How does it compete against other banners? Do I have to replace your product with Google? So we built a product and a framework around their existing tech stack. We brought in industry veterans who understood content sites to make this as easy and as seamless to integrate, where literally we can get you set up in 2 weeks, even if you're a large publisher like Benzinga. And then publishers start seeing real incrementality in revenue. And we pride ourselves as well now in bringing them premium advertisers, right? We have budgets from Subaru, we have budgets from Bank of Montreal, we have budgets from Puma, and all these really large advertisers that the publishers really want to work with. And so that makes sense at scale. it's harder to start off, right? I talked about the cold start problem that Andrew Chen from Sequoia A16Z, sorry, talks a lot about. It was difficult in the beginning, but now, of course, it's growing fast as a value prop. Does that make sense to you, Jeremy?
Yeah, and so I'm just going to show from a placement perspective, okay?
Correct.
You can see there's an article here in Benzinga, people are reading it, and then there's, you know, these ad units that are thanks for reading, and they're compelling deals, right? And this is powered by Goloot. Another example would be if someone signs up for a newsletter, right? Because people are underutilizing their thank you page on their
100%
newsletter page. So a lot of people have nothing there, right? So this, as an example, you could sign up for a site, and you can see thanks for registering, as a thank you. It's a nice thank you for the person registering, and also it's prime real estate right there. And you can see there's Constant Contact, CB Wine Program, Amazon Music, and this is also powered by Goloot. What about from the product side? Was there any iteration or evolution from the beginning? Like right now, we see what you've done over the past 3 years. Has it stayed pretty much the same, or has it evolved?
It's evolved a lot. We have about 4 or 5. We went from like having only one web format to 4 or 5. I think now we're going to get close to 10 actually different web formats that publishers can integrate on all of their pages to show our offers. And the core nature of our business is optimizing for performance, right? So we pride ourselves in certain specific KPIs that I want to share with you, Jeremy. Our ad units are across all of our content sites, and we have substantial data to back that up because we reach 30 million shoppers every single month in Canada and the US with those ads every month. So we get a lot of people clicking on those ads. On average, for a content site like Benzinga or whomever, we will increase engagement by 1,600% compared to standard banners. And that's not a small jump. That's an enormous jump. So users showing appreciation for our ad unit and then tangibly interacting with it is a significant milestone. And on average, from a conversion standpoint, we increase conversion for advertisers by about 900% compared to standard display. So the effectiveness of ad spend is so much more significant on our channel than it can be anywhere else. And this helps the publishers make more money because we can justify a premium, and it helps us, of course, justify our value proposition to our clients to get them to adopt our platform. And so why do I mention these KPIs? It's because from a product standpoint, the thing that we wake up with in the morning and go to bed with at night is optimizing for performance, building the best possible ads. And we, over the course of 2 or 3 years, have done a lot of research and development and continue to do so to try to understand what gets people clicking. And some of these ideas that we've had is like, hey, we realized when we introduce offers on a content site like Elle or Benzinga or whatever, not a lot of people were clicking on it at the beginning. It was good, but it could have been better. And one of the ideas that we had is it needs to look like it comes from the publisher. People trust Forbes, people trust Wall Street Journal, people trust Elle magazine. They don't trust offers because they've been burned so many times on the internet with these scams that are pretending to be a value add, but they're not. And so we built our ad units to look and feel, and I think it's especially true in this Benzinga example, to look and feel like they're given to you by Benzinga. The fonts are very similar to the content. The call to actions are in color, very similar to the web page. Even Benzinga's logo is leveraged at the ad unit level to reinforce that trust. So we try to implement all these changes and really understand why are users clicking versus not. And this is what our product team has been doing every day. And there have been thousands and thousands and thousands of iterations to come up with this formula today that works, but there's still a lot of work ahead. So, yeah.
So we talked the publisher side. Okay. Now you need advertisers. All right. Correct. And these advertisers are getting approached all the time from people. Right. So it's not so easy to be like, hey, Uber, I want some ad budget. Okay. So let's talk through on the advertiser side. Now you have these publishers. You need the advertisers. And we mentioned a bunch here, and you could see them if you're watching the screen. You could see Uber, Foot Locker, Crocs, Uber Eats, Vistaprint, Fanatics, Puma, all these. Let's talk about Foot Locker for a second.
Yeah.
How did that work?
So a lot of the business development that we
How
do,
did you get Foot Locker?
Yeah. a lot of the biz dev that we do is via agencies primarily, right? So agencies manage a brand's ad budget. So we don't necessarily always go direct to the brand. We will work with the agency partner to try and acquire that customer. And you will be surprised, maybe not actually, Jeremy, to hear that this industry for the past 20 years, everybody's been selling the same thing. And everybody's been giving to these brands the same message. I like to consider the past 20 years in the digital advertising space to be a race to the bottom, meaning every single ad network came to agencies and brands with the same ad units, but they always try to make it cheaper. Somehow they found a way to make your CPC a tenth of a quarter of a cent cheaper. And brands are buying into, again, that race to the bottom. And there's been some optimization from a data and targeting standpoint, but ultimately the user experience remains the same. When I started this business, and again, there's a huge component of luck and timing, the legislative landscape of North America was changing dramatically. Apple took down the IDFA from its ecosystem in 2021, which sent the entire industry in a downward spiral to find new ways to acquire customers. Safari took down cookies a couple of months later. Again, the entire industry goes in a downward spiral to find new ways to acquire more customers. And Facebook's advertising revenue was declining for the first time in 2 decades. And I came in again in this momentum with a brand new value proposition. And we found that on the demand side, agencies and advertisers were craving for diversification. They were craving for new ways to acquire customers that were privacy compliant, that were cookie-less, that were maybe more modern, more user-friendly, more respectful of the end user. And then I would say the last lucky bit for me as an entrepreneur, which timing is everything, right? If you think of all these larger companies as well that came before my time, they were all lucky in their own way. In the Canadian landscape, more specifically, Facebook got in this immense war against the Canadian government and banned local content sites from their platform. And agencies and brands in Canada rallied around Canadian content publishers, think the CBC, so the Canadian Broadcasting Channel, and said, hey, we're going to allocate a certain percentage of our ad spend to you to keep you alive. And we came in as like, hey, we're an ad network made up of all these content sites. Why don't you start working with us? So again, there was a lot of market momentum and a lot of signs that showed that Goloot had, even before its product, significant product market fit. And our pitch to advertisers was quite easy because other than getting a cold beer and a pizza, agencies had seen nothing new from these ad networks that were ruling the ad landscape for the past 20 years. So that's been our strategy on the demand side, and it's been working out really, really well so far for our clients. And we can talk more about that Foot Locker example. Of course, I'm happy to walk you through some of those use cases, but
let's talk about Foot Locker. But first, I can see the value proposition, right? You're like, hey, we can get your clients more customers, right? And put you on these platforms. We already have relationships with these publishers. So what types of agencies are ideal for you? Like someone's listening, I have a lot of agency owners on or listen, and they're thinking, oh, this may be interesting for our clients. What type of agencies are a good fit to contact you to possibly work with some of their brands?
Absolutely. So I think the cherry on the sundae, which will also answer your question about the agency fit, is that because we get such an impressive yield in performance compared to standard display, we work with our clients on performance only. So we don't charge impression-based fees, so CPM. We don't charge flat fee to promote you on our network. We charge brands for outcomes, which is either a click to your website, so the acquisition of traffic, or the acquisition of an email. Some of these ad units that you were looking at, Jeremy, when you click on one of these offers, users can type in their email and they'll be able to, and it may not apply to any of the ones you're looking at, but sometimes you can type in your email and we'll acquire that email on behalf of our client natively within the content. So we will sell that email to the clients as from a lead generation standpoint.
Yeah.
So of course, if you look at those performance-based strategies, our clients have primarily been performance agencies or media agencies, right? Those who are responsible for ad spend and are looking for ways to get more traffic to their brands, to get more emails in their mailing list. So those CRM-based strategies, to get more sales on their e-commerce. This is what brands come to us with. And as I said, the cherry on the sundae, to wrap up that pitch, we told our clients, you want to test this out, we'll only charge you on outcomes. Because I get such an impressive yield again in performance that my business model makes sense. If I was getting the same performance as standard display, I would have to be charging you those ridiculously expensive CPM fees or whatnot. So some of our agency partners include Dentsu, Omnicom Media Group. We work with Cassette a lot in the Canadian market as well. So we have a lot of very, very large agencies that come to us, but also these hyper-local, much smaller media agencies. They come to us with 1 or 2 accounts, and we provide managed services to these agencies to help them onboard on our network, start driving that tangible result and performance for their clients. So
awesome. Yeah, it's a no-brainer. You have your pitch down.
I know. Thank you.
When you talk about outcomes, it's like, what's the risk, right?
What's the catch?
So
Yeah.
Foot Locker, what did you do with them?
So Foot Locker came to us with the traditional goal of wanting to acquire more customers in Canada and from an e-commerce standpoint, right? So they provided to our network. What typically happens is like this exclusive offer, like a 10 or 15% off site-wide offer. And it varies. Brands have a lot of flexibility to A/B test discounts and whatnot. And they were hoping that Goloot's platform would excel at driving low funnel results, right? So an incremental growth in their e-commerce sales. And we were able to deliver a lot of that. And the campaign exceeded its target ROAS. I think we reached like 7-to-1 return on ad spend with them in the first few months. Consistently, Foot Locker has been acquiring customers and spending money on our network for about 1.5 years now, and they haven't stopped. And what was even more impressive is the fact that about half of the audience that we acquired for Foot Locker, and this is data I can share with you, so we have a public common use case. Half of the audience that we acquired for Foot Locker were new to file shoppers in Canada. They were new customers that had never shopped before at Foot Locker. And this is the power of content, in my opinion. Content is a place of inspiration where people don't have their mind made up yet, but they're looking to get inspired for their next purchase. And when we target the right users in the right articles, reading the right content about sports or whatever, then Foot Locker becomes a natural extension of that content. And you can find shoppers that you've never interacted with, as opposed to social that can be quite saturated. Foot Locker found a really, really interesting, scalable, new to file driven acquisition channel with us. And of course, once you see these results come in, then the brands, it's like a no-brainer to keep spending. We were so aggressive in the beginning because we were venture-backed as well. We disrupted the industry. We were like, hey, we want your budget. We believe in our product. If you give us a good offer, we know what we can do. We'll guarantee return on ad spend to you. If you don't make a positive return on this campaign, we'll get you your money back. So brands were like, okay, Lucas, like I'll throw money at you. But I was betting on some fundamental metrics that I knew if I got them this impression and this click, it would convert in that range. If it didn't, then I basically had no value prop anyway. So it was a bet against my own product, and those bets paid off big time. And we continue to approach some of our clients with these very aggressive strategies to be like, hey, give us a good offer. We'll guarantee that you will see those net positive returns. And in my opinion, if an ad network's not selling you that, they don't really believe in their own product, and you might get burned. So this was our approach, and it worked well for Foot Locker. And look at them scaling with us today.
So Lucas, we have a little bit of time left, and I have 72 questions here, but I want to rapid fire a little bit. We talk about the growth side, okay?
Yes.
And one of the ways you get out in front is industry events. Talk about some of your favorites, industry events that you'd like to attend.
Absolutely. So we do a lot of performance marketing events. Shop Talk is definitely one of the best ones, and I'll be there in a week from now. So if this podcast comes out in a timely fashion, some people can reach out, because I will be roaming Vegas in search of new partnerships and making new friends as well. So I'm happy to connect with anybody. So Shop Talk definitely tops that list. I love a lot of the affiliate conferences. Think of like CJU, which is it's a private event, so it's invite only. It's a bit harder to get.
That's Commission Junction's conference.
Correct. Commission Junction conference for their top driving channels, so publishers and brands. You make incredible friends and connections there in Santa Barbara every year. So I love CJU. I'll be there again this year. So of course we attend like the Rakuten event. Affiliate Summit is a great conference, especially the West one. PI Live, which is another performance marketing conference. You get a lot of retailers, a lot of brands looking to acquire more customers and diversify their strategies. It's very performance driven. Think CPC, CPA partnerships, email acquisition partnerships, which is where we excel. And yeah, so these are a bunch of conferences that I'll be attending. I told you about 10 a year. This is what I like to keep it down to. So almost a trip a month. And
Is it just you, or do you have other team members that go with you?
I typically try to get other team members, but depending on the nature of the conference, it'll be me. Sometimes I don't even go, right? So I'll personally do 10. Sometimes I bring other team members. Like I'll be going with someone else to Shop Talk on my team on the sales side. But there's a lot of local agency events. We're an IAB Canada member, a very proud IAB Canada member. We sit on the different types of boards as well from a data privacy standpoint with them.
What does that stand for? What's IB Canada?
IAB is the International Advertising Bureau.
Mm.
And so it is the sort of the constitution of the advertising landscape. Its founding fathers are Facebook and Alphabet and the large ad networks. And they provide the guiding principles and the guiding rules of advertising when it comes to standards and formats and privacy and this and that. And they, of course, mediate with every government, whether it's the US government or Canadian government. So most of the larger quote unquote ad networks are IAB members, and Goloot is one of them in Canada. So we go to a lot of industry events in Canada, and my sales team will represent us there. So
another question is, you mentioned you really have advisors and mentors. And so who are some of those? I know you mentioned Mitch Garber, obviously peers who you brought on. Who are some of the other advisors or industry veterans that you look to?
I mean, the biggest contributors to our journey have undoubtedly been the talent that is on our team today. We have some phenomenal people, whether it's my head of product, Alex, who Alex Guerigan is his full name, who is a repeat founder, who has a lot of retail and tech experience and leading products from the earliest stages to scale. My CTO is a phenomenal person, Jacques Fregot. He is an experienced, again, leader in the tech space, a very knowledgeable developer. And I respect all these individuals for different reasons, right? And anyone else on our team, whether it's Alexandra, who runs all of our networks, she has like 10 plus years of experience in advertising. I have someone leading all of my publishers business. Emil, his name is. He's a industry veteran with 20 plus years of experience. Used to be a vice president at ShareThrough, the very, very, very large ad exchange that everybody knows. So yeah, I love all these people, and they're undoubtedly the best advisors to me as a founder. Of course, our investors, we can't not talk about them. The lead investor in the company, who's I like to consider my father in business, quote unquote, is Joel Leonoff. Joel is the founder of PaySafe, which is a multi-billion-dollar fintech company that was started originally in Montreal, scaled to 3,000 plus employees. I met Joel when PaySafe went public on the NASDAQ, $9 billion IPO. You can imagine the gentleman was doing very well for himself at that time. And he was such an inspirational leader and always has been. And he is very involved in our journey. So is his right-hand man, Danny Chazanoff, who used to be the COO of PaySafe. So again, 30 plus year industry veteran, phenomenal tech leader that went from the stage of ideation to bringing this company public, one of the largest success stories in Canada. And there are many others, right? So we have the previous vice president of Cassette Media, the agency, and he also used to be the president of Group M, Axel Dumont. I have the chief legal officer of L'Oreal on my investor list. Her name is Nadia Petrolito. She's L'Oreal's global counsel based in Paris. We have the COO of Cadillac Fairview, which is one of the largest commercial real estate companies in the world. So they do all these malls in Canada, like Eaton Center in Toronto is them. So there's so much to talk about, and so many people to
Joel
thank,
for a second. I mean, because I wanted to talk
Yeah.
about the fundraising side and the lessons
sure.
learned, and I think it'd be a good place to talk about Joel and how you actually met him and actually formed that relationship that he invested. And taking a risk on any startup, but taking a risk on an 18-year-old startup.
Yeah. Yeah. Clearly Joel wasn't a student of ageism. So he believed in the individual first and foremost. And I think that's the underlying thesis for all of his investments, right? It thinks like a good founder, which I hope to qualify for one day. I think I'm work in progress. Let's put it this way. A good founder can take a bad product to market and turn it into a success. A bad founder can take a great product and throw it in the trash, right? So it's his premise and it's his thesis, and he's really stuck by it his whole career, which is something that I think is remarkable. I met Joel when I was super young. I was a student still, through 1,000 different connections, honestly. Like there was various layers between a guy born and raised in Montreal. I was fortunate enough to go to private school and this and that. So luckily I have parents who were both in the banking industry and they did well for themselves. But between that and one of Canada's top founder, multi-billion-dollar exit, there's like a trillion million layers. So I went from one person to the other, to the other, to the other, to up until someone decided that I should be taking coffee with a gentleman that I mentioned called Danny Chazanoff. And Danny gave me a Saturday coffee or Sunday coffee in his home neighborhood in Montreal. And I went for coffee with Danny and he loved my story and he loved my pitch. And back then, 2020, 2021, these guys had just IPO. It was money craze. Everybody was investing, spending money. It's not the current state of the market. It was very different, as you know. It was the Bitcoin era. Everybody was making so much money, they didn't know what to do with it. So these guys were looking to give back to Montreal and to support young founders that were coming up with new ideas, and they loved what I was working on. Danny eventually got me to Joel, and Joel gave me nothing but a 15 minutes in his office meeting. I missed an exam from school because of that meeting. I made the decision because Joel was late, rightfully so, honestly. Joel was late and I made the decision, like, do I go back to school now or do I wait for Joel and miss this exam? And I decided to miss the exam and wait for Joel, which was the best decision of my life. And Joel gave me 15 minutes and he loved it. He invited me again the following week. And he made a proposition to invest, but kind of like a shark approach in the sense of like, I want X percentage of your company. I want to become a partner. I want to become a mentor. I'll give you a bit of money. What do you want to do with this money? And it wasn't a bit. It was actually quite a substantial amount. And I told him, look, I'll take this money and I'll raise double because I think with you and with your network, we can do a lot more together. And he loved that passion and that energy. And off to the races we went. So again, connections, relationships, thousands of meetings finally got me to Joel at some point. And made the best impression in 15 minutes that got him to want to invest more in me as a human being. So,
Lucas, I'm excited to follow your journey. Thanks for sharing the lessons, the journey. So much more to cover, but so little time. I want to encourage people to go to goloot.io. And it really reminds me, Lucas, of when I had on Tara Bosch, who started Smart Suites, who was early in the industry, really just wanted to reinvent candy and didn't have industry knowledge, but that kind of is an advantage. And I remember interviewing her and then hearing the story later on that she was acquired for $360 million. And so just an amazing story. And it just reminds me a lot of this story. So anyways, everyone check out goloot.io. If you know someone, a publisher, an agency, a brand that this would benefit, send it their way. And Lucas, I'm going to be the first one to thank you. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Jeremy, for your time. Talk soon.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.